most people live at the mercy of their emotions. They wait to feel ready, feel like it, or feel motivated. But discipline, real discipline, doesn't wait for permission from emotion. It commands the body. It commands the day, even when the mood rebels. The problem isn't that you're lazy, it's that you haven't learned how to command yourself. In this video, you'll learn 12 Stoic laws, laws that turn your mind into an ally, not a traitor. And when you can control yourself, no one else can control you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Discipline is not punishment. It's not self-denial or some rigid military code. It's self-respect, made visible. It's saying, "I'm worth more than chaos. I'm worth showing up every single day." And in a world addicted to dopamine, where distractions are engineered to hijack your brain, the most dangerous person in the room is the one with inner structure. Discipline gives you the ability to move forward when you feel nothing, when life's loud, but your mission is louder. The 12 laws you're about to learn aren't tricks. They're mental architecture. They're how you move without waiting for motivation, how you build order when the world offers you none. And once these laws are etched into your mind, you stop being predictable. You become unstoppable. Let's begin. There's a moment you face every single day that no one sees. No music, no applause, just you and the decision. Do I stick to what I said, or do I let myself off the hook again? This moment doesn't scream. It whispers, and that whisper shapes everything. See, people think discipline is about grinding, forcing yourself through misery. But that's a misunderstanding. Discipline isn't punishment. It's a message. A message you send to yourself over and over again. And the message is this: I'm worth showing up for. Every time you follow through, even on something small, you reinforce a truth that your future matters, that your word carries weight, that you are the kind of person who follows through. And here's the truth most people avoid. You don't become confident and then act. You act your way into confidence. It's not about looking in the mirror and repeating affirmations. It's about proving to yourself, through action, that you're someone you can rely on. You say you'll work out. You say you'll write. You say you'll stop texting that person who plays games with your mind. And then comes the test. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet window of choice. Will you honor your own voice? And when you don't, when you break that promise, your brain records the betrayal. It learns that your words are negotiable. That's how self-respect erodes quietly. Not from what others say about you, but from what you silently say to yourself when you don't follow through. But here's the power flip. When you act in alignment with what you said, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, even when no one else is watching, you train your mind to associate discomfort with integrity, not suffering. That's how self-trust is built. Not from motivation, not from hype, but from proof. Every time you move toward your standard, instead of your mood, you cast a vote for the identity you're building. You make your mind your ally because it learns you mean business. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." It wasn't a motivational quote. It was a challenge. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop needing someone to clap for you. Do the thing because that's who you are. Because the real flex isn't how loud you can be. It's how consistent you are when no one's watching. You want real self-worth. Don't chase it. Earn it. Not through status. Not through validation. But by keeping your word to yourself. Because when you stop negotiating with your lesser impulses, you become a force. Discipline doesn't cage you. It frees you from your own lower nature. The part of you that makes excuses, that lives for temporary comfort, that avoids the work but prays for the reward. Discipline silences that part, not with cruelty, but with clarity. It says, "I respect myself too much to let that version lead." And here's the irony. When you live like this, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. You become unreadable, unshakable. Someone whose energy communicates, "I don't chase. I choose." Because you've chosen yourself long before anyone else did. And every time you do that, you become more dangerous. Not to others, but to the old version of yourself. The version that played small. The version that broke promises. The version that needed permission. He doesn't run the show anymore. Now, you do. And it all starts with this. Not a grand transformation, but a single, repeated whisper. Show up. When you do that, again and again, even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when no one notices, you're not just building habits. You're building a self. A self that knows I'm worth the discipline, I'm worth the effort, I'm worth the standard. Not someday. Now. You ever wonder why someone's routine works like magic for them, but falls apart the second you try it? They wake up at 5 a.m., drink black coffee, run 10 miles, journal, cold shower, deep work by 7:30. And you try to follow it, thinking, this is what discipline looks like, only to feel like a fraud 2 days in. Here's the truth. No one tells you discipline is not one size fits all. It's not a script you copy. It's a weapon you craft for your own hand. The reason their structure works for them isn't because it's the way, it's because it fits their rhythm, their wiring, their temperament. But you might be building a temple with tools made for a different kind of terrain. Some people thrive in intensity. They need the sharp edge of discomfort to feel alive. Others, especially the quiet ones, don't need noise or chaos to grow. They need space. They need stillness. They need to move deeply, not loudly. And when you ignore that, when you force yourself to fit into someone else's mold, you don't become more disciplined. You become more disconnected from yourself, from your rhythm, from your inner clarity. That's why discipline has to start from self-awareness, not self-judgment. Not why can't I do what they do, but what actually works for me. Are you a slow starter who needs silence to enter flow? Then stop forcing high-stimulus sprints in crowded spaces. Maybe your power lies in ritual, not rush. Are you someone who needs feedback, movement, community? then don't punish yourself for not being a monk. Your strength might be in momentum, not minimalism. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just using the wrong operating system. Think of it like this. Trying to run a jet engine with the code of a sailboat is not discipline. It's sabotage. You're not weak because their system drains you. You're just not wired for imitation. Discipline isn't mimicry. It's customization. It's knowing these hours. I'm focused. This space. I move best. These triggers. I remove. This is how I get out of my own way. It's not about how your routine looks on paper. It's about how it feels in your bones. True discipline flows when the structure serves your nature, not when it fights it. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." He wasn't talking about feelings. He was talking about alignment, knowing yourself deeply enough that your system reflects your soul, not just your goals. See, discipline isn't about punishment. It's about precision. And if you keep judging yourself by someone else's rhythm, you'll never hear your own. But when you start asking, what fuels me? What drains me? What time of day do I think most clearly? What rituals ground me? Then you start building something powerful. Not just consistent, but sustainable. Because now you're not copying discipline. You're crafting it. And that kind of discipline, it doesn't burn out. It doesn't break under pressure. Because it wasn't borrowed. It was built for you. Chaos doesn't crash into your life with alarms. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up quietly, in the form of unread messages, delayed décision, one missed workout, one postponed hard conversation, one more thing you said you'd get to later. Nothing breaks. Nothing catches fire. And so you tell yourself, it's fine. But what you don't see is this. Every loose thread pulls on your peace. And slowly, almost invisibly, you start leaking energy. Not because life got louder, but because you became more scattered. That drawer you keep saying you'll organize, the budget you keep avoiding, the apology you know you owe, the structure you once had but now ignore. None of these are emergencies, but each is a small hole, and you're bleeding through them. This is what people don't understand about discipline. It's not just about action. It's about containment. It's about integrity of space. Because the more disorder you tolerate internally or externally, the more diluted you become. Your clarity fades. Your will weakens. Your standards blur. And you begin to question yourself. Not because you failed anything major, but because you've lost the quiet anchor that used to hold you. This is the erosion of trust, not with others, but with yourself. And the danger, it doesn't come from one chaotic moment. It comes from hundreds of tiny ones that slip under the radar, undetected, unspoken, until one day you don't feel sharp anymore. You don't feel in control. You can't explain it. But something inside feels off. It's the weight of every unchecked tab in your mind, every task you pushed aside, every mess you told yourself you'd tolerate for now. Disorder is not just a lifestyle issue. It's a psychological leak. And if left alone, it mutates into something deeper: self-doubt, decision fatigue, and eventually, helplessness. That's why the Stoics viewed discipline as hygiene for the soul. Marcus Aurelius didn't just journal for insight. He journaled for clarity, for structure, because without it, the mind becomes a fog, and a foggy mind can't fight. So no lack of discipline won't destroy you overnight. It's not an explosion, it's erosion. And the only antidote is order, not perfection, not military rigidity, but a personal ecosystem that holds you so your energy isn't wasted, containing the uncontained. Because here's the shift most people miss. Order isn't control, it's freedom. The freedom to think clearly, to move without hesitation, to say no to what doesn't serve your structure, because you finally have one. When your inner world is aligned, you stop chasing noise. You stop reacting to chaos, because you've built a base too solid for nonsense to land on. Trật tự bên trong là nền để bạn chọn điều gì xứng đáng và gạt bỏ những thứ chỉ khiến bạn rối loạn. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer leaks. And every time you close a loop, every time you finish the small task, take the walk, clear the space, choose the boundary, you tell your nervous system, I am safe in myself. That is power. Quiet power. Sustainable power. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to last. Success feels like a reward, but in reality, it's a test, and most people fail it. Not because they become reckless, but because they become relaxed. They start skipping the very habits that got them there. They confuse momentum with permanence. And worst of all, they start believing the illusion that I've made it. You see this everywhere. In athletes after the championship, in leaders after the applause, in relationships after the chase is over, the fire goes out. Not from failure, but from forgetting why the fire was lit in the first place. That's the trap. Success numbs you. It softens your edge. It turns urgency into comfort, standards into ego, clarity into assumption, and slowly, almost politely, you stop being the person who earned the win and start becoming the person who expects it. That's why the Stoics never celebrated victory too long. Marcus Aurelius wrote more intensely after triumphs, because he knew the most dangerous moment isn't when you're losing, it's right after you've won. When no one's watching, when no one's pushing, when applause becomes silence, and silence becomes permission to drift. True discipline isn't forged in fire. It's tested in comfort. It's who you are when the storm has passed, and no one's demanding your best anymore. The weak man uses victory as vacation. The strong man uses it as calibration. He asks himself, now that I've won, what standard do I set next? Because every win is a crossroad. You either sharpen your sword further or let it rust quietly on the wall. And rust doesn't scream. It just waits. Until one day, the blade you once trusted doesn't cut when it's time. This is why many great men fall. Not from betrayal, not from battle, but from boredom. They kept replaying old victories, old formulas, old routines, instead of upgrading the code. So here's the real test of power. Can you evolve past the win? Can you raise your standard when no one's asking you to? Can you keep the structure when ease invites you to drop it? Most can't. They think the goal was the peak. But the Stoic understands. The peak is just another beginning. If you don't raise the floor after you rise, you eventually fall through it. Success without standards is just a seductive lullaby. It flatters you until it puts your drive to sleep. But you weren't built to nap in your own greatness. You were built to refine it. And that means, after the applause, you build new silence, new struggle, new rules. Because the man who can upgrade after he's already won becomes a force that doesn't need to fall to rise again. Most people are waiting for the right mood, waiting for motivation, waiting for some magical spark to drag them into motion. But that spark rarely comes, and when it does, it dies just as fast. Because inspiration isn't the fuel. It's the byproduct of movement. It doesn't start the engine. It appears once the wheels are already turning. You don't feel like doing the hard thing. You become the kind of person who does it by starting before you feel ready. That's why the Stoics never trusted emotion as a compass. Marcus Aurelius didn't write, "Wait for inspiration before doing what's right." He said, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I was made to do this." Not because he always felt it, but because he didn't need to. Discipline isn't a debate. It's a default. A contract with your higher self, signed in silence and executed in routine. You see, the undisciplined man waits to feel aligned. The disciplined one, he shows up until alignment catches up. He doesn't wait for clarity. He creates it by stepping forward while the fog is still thick, because every action chisels away at the resistance. Every small move silences the noise. And before you realize it, momentum replaces motivation. Here's the truth most won't accept. The feelings follow the motion, not the other way around. You don't become confident before the reps. You become confident because of the reps. You don't feel focused before you sit down. You feel focused after the first 10 minutes of silence and doing the work. Inspiration is a reward, not a requirement. So stop treating your emotions like a boss. They're not here to lead. They're here to be led. When you wake up and feel heavy, move anyway. When the task feels meaningless, do it with precision. When your mind screams for comfort, answer with structure. Discipline is when the emotional noise shows up. And you don't negotiate. You don't reason. You don't seek a vote. You execute. Because every time you obey your feelings, you strengthen the voice that wants comfort. But every time you act despite them, you reinforce the version of you that finishes regardless. So no, you don't need to be inspired. You just need to begin. To build the proof that you can act, even in resistance. That your will is louder than your mood. And that is the most powerful signal you can send to your own mind. I don't need to feel like it. I just need to move. Most people aren't living. They're just reacting. Running loops. repeating the same unconscious patterns, because the brain loves efficiency more than truth. It automates decisions so you don't have to think. It saves energy at the cost of control. Wake up, scroll, complain, delay, escape. Just another day ruled by impulse, disguised as normal. But Stoicism doesn't honor autopilot. It honors intention. The Stoic doesn't move just because he feels. He moves because he decides. That's the essence of discipline, to reclaim your day from reflex, to interrupt the unconscious. You see, discipline isn't always about big acts of sacrifice. Often, it's hidden in the micro choices no one sees. Do I reach for my phone or sit in silence for 2 minutes first? Do I eat just because it's there or ask if I'm actually hungry? Do I snap back or pause and choose my response? These aren't dramatic moments, but they shape your identity. Every day, every hour, every repetition. Each automatic reaction you override is a vote for the man you chose to become, not the one your habits built by default. You might think you're free because you're doing what you feel like, but feelings are often the most powerful chains because they convince you it's you choosing, when it's really just programming. So here's the practice. Pick one thing each morning. One moment you'll take back from automation. Not 10. Not everything. Just one. Maybe it's your first 10 minutes after waking up. Maybe it's how you respond to a rude message. Maybe it's the tone you use when you're tired. Whatever it is, make it yours. Not reactive, but intentional. And what happens when you do this is profound. You begin to slow down, not in motion, but in consciousness. You begin to see the gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap, you find your true power. The power to choose. This is where the Stoic lives. In the gap. Not pulled by every emotion. Not yanked by every distraction. But grounded in the question, what kind of man do I want to be right now? He's not perfect, but he's present. He doesn't always win, but he knows when he gave the reflex too much room, and he recalibrates, because the enemy of discipline isn't chaos. It's unconscious repetition. So, live by choice, not default. By decision, not feeling. By design, not impulse. Even just once a day. That's how you shift the system. That's how you reclaim command. And that's how you become the man whose every move means something. Anyone can perform when the lights are on. Anyone can look disciplined when there's an audience. But the question is this: what do you do when the room is empty? When there's no one to applaud, no one to post, no one to praise? That right there is your truth. Not your Instagram, not your highlight reel, but your private patterns. When the alarm rings at 5 a.m. and no one will ever know if you hit snooze. When you're tempted to cut corners and no one would catch you. That's where character is forged. In silence, in solitude, in self-accountability. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. Because the point of Stoic discipline isn't to earn applause. It's to earn peace with yourself. You don't live for approval. You live for alignment. To look in the mirror and respect the man staring back, even if no one else knows the effort behind it. In a world that worships performance, power comes from privacy. When you do the hard thing without needing a witness, that's not weakness. That's pure strength. When you make your bed, clean your space, show up, train, study, pray, without broadcasting it, you become a different breed. Because quiet consistency is a weapon. Discipline without audience creates gravity. An unseen force. A silent mass that other people feel when you walk in the room, even if they can't explain it. That's real power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't ask for attention. It earns self-trust. And when you trust yourself, you become immovable. So here's the challenge. Next time you're alone, ask yourself, would I still do this if no one ever knew? And if the answer is yes, then you're not just building habits. You're building honor. The Stoic doesn't just act right in public. He acts right when it's inconvenient, unseen, unrewarded, because he knows that's who he really is. Your brain is not your friend by default. It's ancient hardware, built for survival, not strength. It chases the quickest reward, the ping of a phone, the hit of sugar, the fleeting praise on a screen. That's dopamine's game. And it's cheap. But here's the thing. Every time you let it win, you wire your mind to crave ease, not excellence. Comfort, not character. That's how men fall, not by failure, but by being addicted to feeling good too soon. Stoicism teaches something radical. You don't chase how it feels. You chase what it builds. Discipline is retraining the reward system. It's telling your brain, no, the win isn't in the result. The win is in the act. When you show up to the gym and your body's still half asleep, that's the win. When you sit down to write and the words don't flow, that's the win. When you act with no applause, push with no dopamine, persist with no feedback, that's the rewiring. You stop needing a hit. You start becoming solid. Here's the shift. Don't reward yourself for being perfect. Reward yourself for being present. Don't say good job only when you finish. Say it when you start, especially when it's hard. Especially when your mind screams for distraction and you stay anyway. That's how you change the algorithm inside your head. From craving stimulation to respecting commitment. Because real power isn't fueled by dopamine. It's built by presence, by patience, by process. So, today, celebrate one thing that you showed up, not to impress, not to escape, but because that's who you are now. Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they drift. And drifting isn't a personality flaw. It's what happens when there's no architecture to your day. No spine, no frame, just motion, without momentum. You wake up in a fog. You grab your phone, scroll a little, then check messages, then maybe coffee, then maybe email, then maybe something random feels urgent enough to steal your whole morning. By noon, you're tired, but not because you've done too much. You're tired because you've done nothing that matters. And the worst part, you know it. You feel the guilt creeping in. It's subtle. It doesn't scream. It just sits there, as a low hum of disappointment in yourself. That is what lack of structure creates. Not explosions, but erosion. We often think of discipline as punishment, as something harsh, something we must force ourselves into. But the Stoics saw it differently. Discipline is self-respect in action. It's not what you do to yourself. It's what you do for yourself. Structure isn't the enemy of freedom. It's what makes freedom possible. Because, without it, every small decision becomes a moral battlefield. Should I work out today? Should I focus or multitask? Should I rest or push harder? Your brain exhausts itself, making the same decisions over and over. Not because they're hard, but because there's no default mode of power. And here's where Stoicism cuts deep. If you don't design your life, someone else will. And they won't design it for your peace. They'll design it for your availability, for your distraction, for your consumption. That's why structure is more than time management. It's spiritual protection. Let's go deeper. Think about this. Every chaotic day doesn't just waste time, it erodes your self-trust. Each time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," but don't, a small part of you starts believing you're unreliable. And over time, you stop setting bold goals, not because they're impossible, but because a quiet voice inside you whispers, "Yeah, but we probably won't follow through anyway." That's what happens without structure. You stop believing your own promises. So what's the alternative? Live like a general, with clarity in mind and systems in place. You don't need to control every hour. You just need non-negotiables. A set wake-up time, a sacred morning ritual, a time block where your most important work gets done before the world grabs you. And most importantly, a shutdown routine that signals, "Today is complete. I did what I said I'd do." Because here's the truth. Most anxiety doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too little of what aligns with your inner values. When your actions and your integrity don't match, you feel disoriented, like a compass spinning without north. Structure realigns that compass. It tells you, this is who I am. This is how I move. Not because you feel like it, but because it's your code. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No random action, none not based on underlying principles." He didn't believe in living on impulse. He believed in rhythm, in repetition, in conscious command. He knew the power of consistent structure because he saw what happened to those who lacked it. Their minds got hijacked, their days lost in trivialities, their legacy buried beneath distractions. Stillness is not created by stopping everything. Stillness comes when you know exactly what to do next. Because when you wake up already, knowing the shape of your day, you don't waste energy debating. You conserve it and use it to execute. There's a reason why elite performers wear the same outfits, eat the same meals, follow the same routines. It's not because they lack creativity. It's because they protect their energy for the battles that matter. They don't make 30 micro-decisions before 9 a.m. They make none, because the system already answers for them. And that's the key insight here. Structure is not rigidity. It's kindness. It's giving yourself a rhythm so your mind doesn't live in chaos. It's creating simplicity so your soul has space to breathe. It's building containers so your energy flows instead of leaking. And in a world that praises busyness, structure whispers something different. You don't have to hustle blindly. You just have to move deliberately. So if you've been feeling stuck lately, not overwhelmed by how much you have to do, but paralyzed by when and where to start, pause. Don't reach for more motivation. Reach for structure. Make one sacred block of time. Protect it. Design your environment to reflect your intention. Write fewer goals, but finish more of them. Turn your to-do list into a time plan. Decide when you start. And, just as importantly, when you stop, then forgive yourself. And repeat it tomorrow. This is what discipline looks like in real life. Not glamorous, not Instagrammable, but real, honest, still, and powerful. So next time you hear that voice in your head saying, "I'm just not disciplined enough," remind yourself, discipline isn't something you find. It's something you build through the bricks of structure, one repeatable habit at a time, one intentional hour at a time, one quiet promise kept when no one's watching. Because the person with structure doesn't need more willpower, they just need to show up to the system they already created. And that is self-love in form. You don't wait to feel ready. You become ready. By moving, you don't wait for belief. You build it. Every disciplined action today isn't about who you are now. It's about who you're wiring yourself to become. We think identity is something we discover, but real identity is something we practice, not a feeling, not a mood, a system of behavior. Repeated. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's not just philosophy. That's neuroplasticity in motion. Your brain doesn't serve your past. It serves your repetitions. Every time you act with discipline, every time you follow through, even when it's hard, you're casting a vote for your future self. Not by vision boards, not by positive affirmations, but by action. Uncomfortable, friction-filled, real. Let's get practical. When you don't hit snooze, you're telling your brain, "I follow through." When you skip the scroll, walk past the junk food, do the thing no one's clapping for, you're whispering, "This is who I am now." That's the shift. Don't act from how you feel. Act from who you're becoming. Because if you wait to feel ready, you'll never act. But if you act before you're ready, you'll become That's not fake. That's faith. In motion. Your brain is always learning. It's learning who you are by what you repeatedly do. So start now. Not when you feel confident. Not when it's perfect. Now. The smallest disciplined action today rewrites the architecture of your identity. This is how transformation happens. Not in fireworks, but in friction. The world tells you to find yourself. Stoicism says, build yourself. With your hands, with your habits, with what you do. When no one's watching, so don't ask. Do I feel like that kind of person yet? Ask, what would the future me do right now? Then do it. Again and again, until it's no longer a stretch, but second nature, because you don't become disciplined after success. You succeed because you acted like the person you were becoming before the results showed up. That's not ambition. That's strategy. That's Stoic identity. Forged in motion. This is how you change your life. Without announcing it, you act like the future you, until there's no difference left. Time is not just ticking. It's building, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware or not. Every single minute you live is a brick, a choice, a decisión, a stroke on the architecture of your future. You're not just spending time, you're investing in structure, in shape, in strength, or in collapse. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't realize they're building a temple until it's too late, until the roof caves in, until the walls echo with regret. But you're hearing this now, and that changes everything. Let me put it this way. Every hour you scroll aimlessly. Every morning you sleep through your own potential. Every afternoon you waste in comparison is another crooked brick. And crooked bricks don't just stay where they are. They stack. They lean. They crack under pressure. Then one day, your life structure gives out. Not because of one bad moment, but because of thousands of weak ones piled high. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up and say, I want to be the emperor of Rome today. He just woke up and placed one solid brick, a page in his journal, a moment of silence, a decision not to retaliate, a practice of restraint, a breath taken slowly. He didn't build a legacy overnight. He built it minute by minute by minute. That's what this law is about. Don't chase the throne. Place the brick. Because the throne is the result of discipline in the dust. In the mornings, no one sees. In the hours you wanted to quit. In the silence you chose over noise. In the work you did without applause. Let's break the illusion right now. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need a 10-step transformation. You don't need the perfect system or routine or journal or podcast. You need one sacred hour. Done right. Today. Because here's the twist. Your future self. He's watching you now. Not to judge, but to inherit what you build. You're handing him a temple. He doesn't get to choose. Only you do. This isn't pressure. This is power. When you realize every minute is a vote for the person you're becoming, you stop throwing time away like trash. You start honoring it. You start choosing like an architect, not an addict. You ask, what am I building with this next hour? Is this helping me endure storms? Will this brick survive heat, pressure, silence, loneliness? Because let me tell you, life will test your temple. There will be fires. There will be winds. There will be people who try to rip your walls down. And when that time comes, only two things will hold: your principles and your bricks. So, what does that mean practically? It means this: wake up and set your first brick before the world demands your attention. Don't check your phone until you've checked in with your own mind. Don't let the day decide who you are. You decide who shows up. Write, read, train, reflect, meditate. Choose one thing and do it with reverence. Even if it's just 30 minutes of deep work. Even if it's just silence before sunrise. Because that one act of control, that's a cornerstone. And once you place it, other bricks fall into alignment. You start making better choices. You stop negotiating with weakness. You remember, you are the builder, and you are the bricklayer. Here's the hard part. Some bricks are boring. Some days feel small. Some moments feel like they don't matter. But they do. Because one good brick, laid 0 times, becomes a monument. You don't notice it day by day, but month by month, year by year, you look up, and suddenly there's a temple, built in silence, built in sacrifice, built in the hours no one clapped for, built in the mornings you didn't want to move, but did anyway. And that temple, that's your mind, your reputation, your capacity for pressure, your ability to lead, to love, to endure. It all comes from bricks. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, don't try to fix your whole life. Don't try to redesign your castle. Just place one good brick. This hour, this minute, the rest will come. Because the ones who last, the ones who win quietly, the ones whose lives become cathedrals of peace and power, they didn't rush. They didn't seek attention. They didn't skip corners. They laid bricks. In the dark, in the cold, in the silence. And that's what you do now. Because this isn't about perfection. It's about intention. This isn't about achievement. It's about alignment. You're not chasing a fantasy life. You're choosing a foundation. And when you do that consistently, the temple rises. You want to grow. You want to evolve. But here's the hard truth. You can't grow in the dark. And you can't fix what you refuse to face. We all say we want progress, but most of us are just running in circles. We do more. Try harder. Grind louder. But very few. Pause to measure. Because measuring requires you to be brutally honest. And honesty It strips away the illusions you've built to survive. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't become wise by accident. He didn't gain clarity by hoping for a better future. He tracked himself, night after night, alone with his thoughts, writing not for admiration, but for accountability. He was an emperor, but his journal reveals a man still at war with his impulses, his pride, his temper, his ego. He measured the internal battle, not just his victories but his lapses. That's real discipline. Not just waking up early, not just grinding every day, but measuring, observing, adjusting. Because the path to mastery isn't paved with motivation. It's built on data, on clarity. Let me ask you, when was the last time you looked at your week? Not with judgment, but with precision. When did you last ask, where did I keep my word? Where did I break it? What emotion controlled me more than it should have? What did I avoid? And why? This isn't soft work. This is Stoic warfare. It's the discipline of tracking, of reflection, of facing your patterns before they destroy you. And here's the mistake most people make. They confuse activity with progress. They think staying busy means they're getting better. But if you don't measure what matters, you're just building a house on sand. But I don't have time to reflect. That excuse is a trap. If you don't have time to examine your own life, then who's driving it? Who's leading your mind, your emotions, your actions? Certainly not you. Imagine your life like a temple. Each hour, a brick. Each habit, a beam. Would you build it without checking the structure? Would you keep stacking bricks, never pausing to see if the foundation is still strong? That's how people live. Then one day, it all collapses. And they call it burnout, crisis, midlife unraveling. But really, it was poor tracking. The Stoics gave us the tool, reflection, not abstract. Not poetic, but practical. You don't need a therapist. You need a journal. You need a weekly audit. You need the courage to look in the mirror without flinching. So here's what you do. Once a week, set a timer, 10 minutes. Ask yourself only 2 questions. 1. What did I do this week that honored my values? 2. Where did I drift off course? Write it down. No filters. No fluff. Just facts. Did you show up for your goals? Or did you negotiate with your excuses? Did you lead yourself? Or were you led by impulse? That one small practice, done weekly, will change the entire trajectory of your life. Because progress isn't about intensity, it's about consistency, with clarity. And clarity comes from tracking, not once a year, not when you hit rock bottom, but every week, every day, if possible. Let me be clear. What you don't measure, you don't master. And what you don't master, eventually, controls you. That's why so many people feel lost. Not because they lack motivation, but because they lack a feedback loop. They're just living, reacting, forgetting, and repeating. But you're not here to drift. You're here to build, to discipline, to become sovereign over your own life. And that means tracking. That means journaling. That means facing yourself before the world does it for you. So tonight, don't scroll. Don't distract. Sit down. Write. What did you follow through on what needs to change? The answers are there. And the truth is, self-reflection isn't a luxury. It's a weapon. Use it.